Hello BYU Cougar fans, this is the editor from bluecougarfootball.com, and today I'll be talking about a 2012 season review for BYU players in the NFL. There's one word that can describe the season this year for former Cougars in the NFL, and that is volatile. When you look at it as a whole, it was a very volatile year for them. Players were switching teams left and right, it seemed like. 3 players played for more than one team. BYU started the year with just 6 players, 6 former players on NFL rosters. By the end of the year, it was 9. Would have been 10 if Austin Collie hadn't been injured. And that doesn't account for one that was cut. So 11 different BYU players at some point in time were on NFL teams during the regular season, active rosters. At any moment they could have been put into the game. And so that right there just shows just how volatile it was of a season. And yeah, BYU saw things, pretty much everything you could imagine happened. Injuries, players getting cut, players being traded, players playing well, and even making it to the Super Bowl, winning, score, and having a key role in that win as well. So just real quickly, I'll go through each player and hit the highlights of the season. We'll go ahead and we'll start with Austin Collie, who's wide receiver for the Colts. His season was the first to end, unfortunately. When the regular season started, he wasn't playing. He suffered concussions during the preseason. It wasn't until week 3 that he saw his first action. On his first catch, a 6-yarder, he suffered a knee injury that ended his season and has now put his career in limbo. Just last week, the Colts decided to not re-sign Austin Collie. His original rookie contract is done now, and they are not going to renew him. This makes 2 seasons that he missed, basically. Or, well, he didn't miss 2 full seasons, but 2 seasons where he's been injury prone. And you're not gonna last in the NFL that way. So unfortunate for him. I'm pretty confident he'll be picked up and land someplace. Hopefully in Denver, and he'll be back with Peyton Manning. Next was John Beck. Started the year as backup quarterback for the Houston Texans. After 4 weeks, he was done. They cut him, and he didn't see any action. And no other team picked him up. And his career might be over as well. It was good to see him get with the Texans. That was kind of considered a long shot after what happened after the draft last year and being cut by the Redskins. So he just might well be done for his career. That is 6 years in the NFL for him. Not a bad career. And then we have Dallas Reynolds. This was his first year on the active roster. He's been a practice player for 3 years, and this year he made it onto the active roster. And thanks to injuries, he found himself in the starting lineup shortly after the season started. He started all but 2 games this year for the Philadelphia Eagles. Best year of his career, obviously. Worst year for the Eagles franchise, though, for over a decade. So kind of a bittersweet season for him. But he carried on BYU's long tradition of having offensive linemen in the NFL. Then there's Brett Kiesel, the grandpa of the group. Been playing in the NFL for 10 seasons now, all with the Pittsburgh Steelers. And while he might be getting up there in age, he had one of his best seasons this year. 4th most tackles in his career, 2nd most sacks in a season for his career. And his leadership, his contributions on the defensive line, they're well valued there in Pittsburgh. Ended the year with 46 tackles, 26 unassisted tackles, 4.5 sacks, 1 fumble recovery, and 1 pass defense or pass breakup. But the Steelers were unable to make it to the playoffs this year. Very uncharacteristic year for the Steelers. And so he's got 1 more year left on his contract. We'll see if next year's not his last. Hopefully, if he wants to, he'll be able to keep playing there in Pittsburgh. Another long-timer that's been in the NFL. We don't think about him much, but John Denny, long snapper for the Miami Dolphins. He had a good solid year. Didn't do anything bad. No major mistakes. The Dolphins were bad, but I can't blame it on Denny. And he actually forced a fumble on one of the punts this year. He got down the field and made the tackle and knocked the ball loose. He also downed 1 punt. Next, we've got take a look at Brian Keel. Brian Keel, he got a late start to the season. He was with the Redskins during the preseason, played well. This guy, he plays great in the preseason. I mean, it's amazing that he's had so much trouble sticking around on a team when he plays so well in the preseason and then doesn't get any opportunities during the season. And so the Redskins cut him right before the season started. But a few weeks into the season, he was picked up by the Kansas City Chiefs, only to be traded again, or let go, and then picked up again by the Redskins near the end of the season. Finished the year with just 6 tackles. So, I mean, it wasn't a great year for him by any stretch. But he did get to stick around for another year, and hopefully he can catch a break next year. And Brady Papinga, he got a real late start to the season. The Green Bay Packers, no, I'm sorry, not the Packers, the Rams didn't keep him after he had a good year with them last year. And so he was, for most of the year, nobody picked him up. Last 4 or 5 weeks of the season, though, the Dallas Cowboys came calling. And he quickly became a part of their defense. Finished the year with 12 tackles to get himself over 300 tackles for his career. And so it was fun watching him the last few weeks to all of a sudden pop up out of the blue onto a roster and make an impact. Not just, be like some other guys here who were just occupying a spot, it seemed like, or just playing a special teams role. But he got in, he played not just special teams, but he played, linebacker on defense and really contributed. But the Cowboys, they didn't make the playoffs either, though. Another one who really bounced around was Vic Soto. He got hurt in the preseason, so the Packers, they put him on injured reserve, but the Raiders decided to take a chance on him, and so he went to the Raiders, spent a good while there, before then ended up back at the Packers for a few weeks, and then finally he wasn't done. He finished the year at the Redskins with Keel. So he spent time with 3 different teams this year, but never saw much action on the field during games, even though he was active. Which was kind of a disappointment, because he finished last year pretty well, and looked like he was going to turn into a solid contributor in the NFL, but those darn injuries always kind of messing things up. Another late season surprise was Hebron Fangupo. He wasn't drafted like we all hoped and thought he would be. Stuck around in Seattle after being cut by the Texans from his free agent contract. Stuck around in Seattle as a practice squad player. Then with 2 weeks left in the season, the Seahawks moved him up, activated him, and then he played in their game that week, and all of a sudden he got shipped off to Pittsburgh for the final week of the season. Very odd what happened with him, but he was with 2 different teams on 2 different active rosters, and but it was just 2 games. But that's where he sits now, is at Pittsburgh. But we can say a BYU player from the 2011 team made it to the NFL in 2012 and played. So maybe we didn't have anyone drafted, but a streak was kept alive of a new player for this season. And the biggest feel-good story probably of the year was Harvey Unga. Last week of the season, Bears promoted him to the active roster. So got to dress up finally for a game, first time in 3 seasons. After he's gone through a lot of tough sledding, you could say, but it was really nice to see him finally be active and dress for a game. Didn't get in and play, but that was a big moment for him, and hopefully he can catch a break next year. Last and definitely not least, our champion, our Vince Lombardi Trophy champion, Dennis Pitta, Baltimore Ravens. His role with the Ravens is just growing and growing. After 40 receptions for 405 yards last year, this year he bumped that up to 61 receptions, 669 yards, went over 100 receptions for his career, over 1,000 yards receiving for his career. Him and Joe Flacco have a great relationship, and it shows on the field. Although he was drafted a round later than another tight end, he has become their number 1 tight end. Suffered a concussion early in Game 10 this year, but didn't have to miss the next game. And in the playoffs, he was stellar. 14 receptions, 163 yards, 3 touchdowns. But a lot of the receptions were key grabs, including a touchdown in the Super Bowl. And had several highlights. A couple of nice touchdowns in a blowout loss to the Broncos during the regular season. And also had one early in the year where he leaped over a defender and rumbled into the end zone for a touchdown. So that's basically it for this year for the BYU Cougars. If you're listening to this on YouTube, visit the site bluecougarfootball.com. a lot more information on these players, recapped, written down, and excited to see next year, what next year brings. And stay close to Blue Cougar football. We'll keep you in touch with everything that's happening, not with just the BYU Cougars there in Provo, but also those in the NFL. Go Cougars!